All right, I think we'll go ahead and get started, everyone. I hope you can hear me okay. If you're having audio issues, like Billy just put in the chat, you can try logging out and then coming back into the event. At any rate, I will go ahead and mention to y'all we are recording this, and we will be providing a link to the recording and a link to the PowerPoint presentation to you guys here in the next couple of days. So good morning and welcome, bright and early. It's 10 o'clock Eastern Time. I'm coming to you from Chattanooga. My name's Katie Julian. I am a member of the Taxpayer Education Team at the Tennessee Department of Revenue Taxpayer Services Division. I'm joined this morning by Billy Trout, my manager of Taxpayer Education, and our Assistant Director, Dan Vinson. Dan, Billy, good morning.
Good morning, Katie and all. Hope everybody's doing well.
Good morning, everybody. I am so glad to see everybody this morning. I want to thank you guys for showing up and attending Katie and Billy's beautiful, wonderful show. You know, Katie works very, very hard. Billy works like this, but Katie works like this to get this kind of thing. Done.
That is true. I'm not going to deny that.
Yep. So we're very grateful that you're showing up to take advantage of this. We hope that you think, as we do, that you are part of our partnership with between the state and the county. I hope you do. And for those purposes, we put on meetings like this. So hopefully we'll gain some understanding and some insight into how we work and how we can work together. So thanks for showing up.
Yes, definitely. Thanks to you all. We had this same event last Tuesday and had some great feedback from it. Overall, we've got between last week's training and this week's training about 40 counties represented, which is great. Hopefully you'll get a lot out of this. We've got a lot of content. Last week we went right up to the wire, right up to 11:30. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and dive into this training, business tax and licensing training for county clerks. We will be covering some other things as well. We're going to talk about some stuff that's new, legislative update, occupancy tax stuff, the new versions of Tentap and the portal. We're going to spend the bulk of the time today talking about business tax and licensing and the business tax portal. That's the bulk of where the issues arise with the clerks and the Department of Revenue with regards to taxes. A little bit of time we'll spend on sales tax, and then have some Q&A and discussion time. We'll actually do some of that throughout. If you have questions, we do have the attendees muted just to, when attendees are not muted, a lot of feedback comes through. So I've got attendees muted, but if you've got questions throughout the entire training, just type them into the chat and we'll stop and address questions as we go along.
Hey, Katie, let me jump in and say one thing real quick.
Sure.
In addition to thanking everybody for being on the call today and in the training, what we're going to do is, like Katie says, go through the information that's on here. No, we can't tell you in 2.5 hours everything that you might possibly need to know about business tax law, the business tax portal, and sales tax stuff. But we're gonna hit the high points, okay? At the same time, also, when we talk about the business tax portal, Katie's going to get knee deep in a couple of things here that you may or may not do in your office, okay? But what we're trying to do today is try to expose you to some of the information that's available for you. We know that there are things in the BIS system that each of you use that do not work properly. I think we all acknowledge that. I think even BIS actually acknowledges that as well. That's okay. We're not here to talk so much about that as we are to emphasize what we do have available for you as tools and that kind of thing. So I just wanted to kind of set that up for you. I'm going to be monitoring this chat while Katie goes through a bunch of stuff. So if you do have these questions, I'll kind of pop in and either answer you in writing, or I'll pop in and interrupt Katie during this whole process too. Okay. Just wanted to kind of let you know about that. Thanks a lot, guys. Katie, it's all yours.
Thanks, Billy. All right, so just getting started here. First slide we've got for you, just a brief introduction here to the distribution that the counties receive from allocations from all the different tax types. You can see here, if you look at the very bottom of this graph, you'll see that the vast majority of allocations to counties comes from sales tax. Business tax and all the others are pretty minuscule in comparison. We find it interesting at revenue, and I'm sure you do too, that the amount of time we put into business tax uh, is a lot more than what we put into sales tax, and for a lot less return on the time investment there. And obviously, as Billy said, some of the frustrations, but at any rate, it's a good thing. It looks like a little bit over almost 5 billion. Is that billion? Yeah, $5 billion almost allocated to counties. So this past summer, we sent around a survey. Hopefully you had a chance to take that survey. Basically just an experience survey for all the clerks and clerks offices regarding various things, our customer service at Taxpayer Services, your experience with our portal, common errors and issues that you have. You can see here from these little pie charts, we're happy to say that you reported your customer service experience with us is very positive and positive. On the other hand, the not so great is your experience with the business tax portal and licensing process is on the negative and very negative side, unfortunately. So that really caused us to perk up and think about all the different things that we could possibly do to increase the level of satisfaction that you have with dealing with this business tax and business licensing process. And we're excited to offer this training today as part of that, as well as we're going to be providing some other resources to y'all, and we'll talk a little bit more about that here in a minute. So just a few things that we heard in the survey. You said we need more training. Provide an updated alphabetical listing of classifications. We have to contact the state too often to help fix problems. Some sales tax stuff, especially military exemptions, is not clear. And of course, lots of comments about we wish our local system and the state system could work better together. And we join you in wishing for that and are working on that issue very much right now. So some other things that we're excited to tell you about as a result of us coming up with some ways to provide more resources to county offices and make everything run a little smoother. We will be having an updated classification listing sent around to you guys very soon. The last one I think that we sent around was, gosh, 5 or 6 years ago. So we are working right now on updating that, and you'll hear more about that in the very near future. We will have a new sales tax manual soon. I don't know, hopefully you've had a chance to check out our new business tax manual. We'll dive into that a little bit later. It came out this past spring in March of 2021, and it's a great exhaustive resource. The sales tax manual, the new sales tax manual will be just as great, and we're real excited about that coming very soon. Excited to announce that we are going to be creating, or we are creating right now, a new online county clerk tax guide. For all of you that may work in the title and registration side as well, what we're creating at Taxpayer Services is going to be similar to what you use for vehicle services for your county clerk guide. It'll have the same format. It'll be a guide that you can access online just like theirs. It'll look very similar, but have all the information compiled in one place. Trainings and frequently asked questions and so on and so forth on business tax and sales tax and occupancy tax. So we're excited to be able to roll that out to you guys hopefully in the very near future. We're going to be working on some employee training materials that you can use in your offices, including the presentation we're giving today and the recording of it. We've got a chart that we've created about when to contact TDR, basically a troubleshooting job aid, what to do in certain situations, who to contact, or how to troubleshoot certain situations. And again, as I mentioned, we've got a new business tax manual, and we'll show you that here in just a little while. It's a great resource. Regarding audit leads, we're going to go ahead and touch on a couple things here that are just overarching. Audit leads, if you want to flag a business tax or sales tax lead, so you've got a situation in your office, maybe you go ahead and process a transaction, but something doesn't look right to you, or you've got another issue. The way to handle that is you scan any documents and email to discovery.unit@tn.gov. And there's a number there, 615-532-6409, if you want to discuss the paperwork or follow up with our audit division. Uh, Another item here is office closures during these crazy times. I know a lot of offices have to close due to illness. We've had your county offices have had to close due to environmental, weather-related things. If your office closes, please just send us a quick email and let us know at revenue.support@tn.gov. When we are closed, the link that you see there is a link that will always be a current listing of all of our state office closures. That link that you see there will get updated as soon as we have our 2022 office closures. That link will always work for the current office closures, just so you know when we're closed.
Hey, Katie, can I jump in
Sure.
and say something on the audit lead thing? We do very much appreciate these leads. And I was talking with a couple of people in audit a week or two ago about that. They were very receptive to get your information, as they always are. Probably the one thing to remember is more detail is better. So, if somebody says, there's a guy on the street corner down here selling rugs and he's not registered with us and we don't know who he is. Well, we can't do anything with that. It's impossible for us to follow up on that. So names, addresses, phone number, whatever you got, give it to us, and then we'll dig and try to bring them into compliance. I just thought I'd throw that out there. Thanks.
Right. Thanks, Billy. One thing I do want to note, you can see on this slide here, there's little red arrows at the links and hyperlinks you see when I send the PowerPoint around to you all. Those are links that are actually live links that you can click on to go to the email address or to the website that is indicated there. So you'll see those little red arrows throughout this presentation. Hopefully when you get the actual copy of the PowerPoint, that'll be helpful for you to be able to quickly access some of these resources that we're pointing out. Again, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. There are our handles. It's another great way if there's ever any new information that we're putting out there. This is the best way to stay abreast of what's going on with the department. If there were to be any closures or issues or our system down, a lot of information like that is put out via our social media. So please take a moment later on, if you're not already following us on any of these platforms, and do so. All right, going to jump right in here to legislative updates. We did have a very active legislative session this year, of course, in 2020. General Assembly got cut short due to COVID, so they had a lot to take care of this year. There were no significant new laws with regard to the taxes as far as the Department of Revenue and counties are involved. Lots of alcohol related laws, alcohol tax, F&E, some general sales tax stuff, but not a lot regarding business tax or occupancy tax. Just a couple things we'll take note of, we'll tell you about here in a minute. But for a listing of all of the legislative summaries by year and by tax type, you can visit this website here. And a link to a recent webinar that we had dealing with legislative updates that was in July. There's a link to that webinar. We'll go ahead and tell you guys too, you may already know, we do a monthly free taxpayer webinar. It's the last Tuesday of every month. So we're having one next Tuesday on filing a sales tax return. Last month it was specified digital products. Like I said, in July we had a legislative summaries webinar. Check out our website. If we've got time later, we will show you where to go on our website to access a few different places for resources. But on our Department of Revenue's website, you just click on taxpayer education and then taxpayer webinars, and that'll always give you a link to the upcoming webinar and register for it. We do those on this WebEx platform that we're using right now. So micro markets, Public Chapter 289 is a bill that passed this year establishing new business tax registration and sales tax reporting procedures for micro markets, which are unattended food establishments. These are the unattended food establishments that are in office buildings, sometimes hospitals. These businesses should obtain one business tax registration for each jurisdiction where multiple micro markets are operated, rather than registering each individual micro market location. So if you've got several of these in your county, they would only register for one location. We've got a question in the chat right now, Billy. Let's see here. Oh gosh, couple questions. Billy, you've already addressed that one. Most recent one from Mitzi: if we contact audit on someone, will the state inform the individuals that we contacted you, or are we left out of this situation? I believe, Billy, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think that audit will not update the county, but you can always call audit and check on the status. Is that right?
More or less, that's true. What audit tries to do is, once we get the information from you, is we try to remove you from the situation. So in other words, once that auditor is assigned that particular task, then they follow it through until they actually either, number one, make an assessment, or number two, decide not to make an assessment. And then of course they have to put all the notes in there and all that kind of stuff too. Now, of course, in the really serious situations that happen, some of those are referred over to special investigations and that sort of stuff, but that's transparent to what you guys need to do. Basically, if you hand us that information, that's probably going to be the end of it. There's not really a reporting way that they have to actually get back and tell the clerk, yeah, this is what we did and that sort of thing too. But if you've got something that's particularly significant, if you'll reach out to Katie or I about that, we might be able to dig and find out, who did what, or to maybe give you a few details, but we're not going to even know all the stuff ourselves because we don't work in audit. But at any rate, we appreciate the fact that you're turning it in and that kind of stuff as well too. Penny said in chat, we were talking about boat forms, and she says, I'm needing a copy of a boat sold in 2018. Do we scan those when we send them in? Yeah, I think they do. So what you can do, Penny, if you'll send me an email with that detailed information, I'll attempt to send that over to audit. In fact, I will send it over to audit, but I don't know if they'll have that information or not. I'm just not sure. But nothing ventured, nothing gained. So if you want to send me an email, Penny, I'll be glad to take your email. Okay. Thanks, y'all.
All right, thanks, Billy. There was a Public Chapter 264 regarding occupancy tax. This public chapter basically just clarified that a vacation lodging service is not a short-term rental unit marketplace, and vacation lodging services should remit the local occupancy tax directly to the county and or city, not to the Department of Revenue. As you all are probably aware, this past year on January 1, short-term rental unit marketplaces such as Airbnb and VRBO, they're now remitting their occupancy tax on their sales tax return on Schedule F, and then Department of Revenue is then remitting that back to the counties and cities. But these vacation lodging services still need to remit local occupancy tax directly to you. And this law defines vacation lodging service as a person or entity that is engaged in the business of providing the services of management, marketing, booking, and rental of short-term rental units. So for example, a vacation rental property management company that handles everything for a property owner, including cleaning, maintenance, not just the booking and marketing, which those marketplaces do. Again, as I mentioned, occupancy tax, you're all pretty aware of this, I'm sure, and kind of rolling in it already. As of January 2021, the Tennessee Department of Revenue began collecting local occupancy tax from the short-term rental unit marketplaces, and we remit that back to the local governments. There is more information on local occupancy tax on our website. If you click on taxes, when you go to tn.gov/revenue, click on taxes and then click on local occupancy tax. There's more information there, including a link over to the important notice about the law that went into effect in January. So Tentap for taxpayers, I'm sure, again, you're already aware of Tentap. That's the forward-facing, taxpayer-facing portal for them to file, register and file and pay for all their taxes. It is required now that all taxes be filed and paid through Tentap. One thing that's pretty cool with Tentap, you can schedule payments in advance. A lot of people aren't aware that you can do that. If you want to file a return, but it's not yet due, you can file the return and then set up a payment to be taken out on the day that the tax is due. So taxpayers can keep their money in their pockets a little bit longer. Automatic correction of common errors. You can amend returns on Tentap, access returns, and so much more. We do have a new updated version of Tentap that got released in late June, early July, along with the business tax portal update. For information on that, you can go to our website. We just want to encourage you all to help us tell taxpayers about Tentap. There are so many business owners that still don't have master level access to their tax accounts. We like to say it's just like having access to your bank account online. A lot of taxpayers, especially ones that hire third-party accountants, CPAs to do their taxes, they don't even have access to their Tentap account, and it's kind of like flying blind. We just really want to encourage all taxpayers to create a Tentap account and add access to all their tax accounts on Tentap.
Katie, we have a question from Miss Penny
Okay.
Petty. And Miss Penny Petty says, I believe, that she's asking if small businesses can still get paper returns. The answer is yes. So basically, we do want everybody on Tentap. And I want to also say one thing. We've always been very honest with our county clerks. You know, we like to share our good and bad news because it's important that everybody knows what's going on. Tentap is very good. It allows people, thousands of people every day to file and pay and to have this online information. It's incredible where we have come over the years on this. So people that use Tentap, they are very appreciative of being able to get information. And a lot of the questions we get in our call center and through our email service are about things that they see on Tentap that are, well, why is that way? You know, why am I looking at that? Why does it show that I owe a balance due from 3 years ago? And then we tell them, well, you know, you didn't do something or whatever, but they wouldn't have known that had they not been on Tentap. So that's why we want them to do it. Now, going back to Penny's situation, if someone does not have a computer, if they do not have internet access or something like that, they need to write us a letter and they need to request a waiver from electronic filing. And once we get their letter at 500 Dederick Street in Nashville, Tennessee, 37211, and I'll put that in chat here in just a second, then we'll get that information and we will give them their waiver. Okay. We know that not everybody has that, but if you get that,
The best is when we got a request for the electronic waiver via email one time, right?
yeah, somebody sent me an email asking for an electronic waiver and I told them no. And I obviously, you have a computer and you can email, so you don't need the waiver, just saying. But there are plenty of people that do, and we're willing to work with them on that. So Penny, if they've been filing paper, they more than likely have the waiver and they can keep doing it. But I'll put the address for people to send things to our department, all correspondence to our department in chat here in just a second. Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's interesting, Billy, the timing of the final rollout of all tax types being available to be filed on Tentap hit just last year, and couldn't have been better timing with COVID hitting and all of our regional offices closing down. Now that everything can be done online, we're just very grateful for that. I will mention too, our regional offices are still closed right now. We had hoped to be reopened by now. We were actually originally aiming for reopening our regional offices this past September, but then with the Delta variant and things still a little bit crazy, we're still home-based and just use our call centers available for taxpayers. 8 to 4:30 Central Time. They're sending us emails and submitting online help tickets, and really just using Tentap now. It kind of forced everybody into using the system. Speaking of, so the new Tentap version for taxpayers, take a moment later to go to this website. You'll see there more information about what's included in the new update, what's changed, what hasn't changed. Really want to encourage you to check that out. You may get questions from taxpayers about Tentap. There may be some stuff you can learn by just watching this video and seeing a couple of other little videos on Tentap that you could help your customers. Again, always feel free to send them to us, but it's a pretty user-friendly system at this point. It gets better and better as the updates go along, but we think it's pretty good. On that website, you can also see there's information there at the bottom. There's just a screenshot here of what that web page looks like, but some more information about using Tentap, and then also Tentap for tax preparers. So check out that website later on or when you get a chance. So we're going to dive into business tax and licensing now. Let me go ahead and tell you all too, we're going to see where we are time-wise, but we are going to take about a 15-minute break halfway through this training today, just so you're all aware of that. Probably after this session, it'll be a good time to take a break. So, all right. So just a infographic here about overall business tax process that I'm sure you're mostly aware of, but it's kind of a different way to look at it here. We've got three major players. You've got a business owner, you've got clerk's office, both city and county, and you've got the Tennessee Department of Revenue there. And of course, a business applies for the license through the clerk's office. The clerk issues the license to the business. When the clerk issues that license to a business, the data for that taxpayer is shared with us at the Tennessee Department of Revenue, and that's shared through that business tax portal, through the system. Of course, I know you all enter that into BIS, but our system works with BIS to take in that data for that taxpayer, and then in turn, when that taxpayer hopefully files and pays their business tax, of course, we send a clearance that they have filed and paid back to the counties for you to be able to issue a renewal license there. We issue tax clearance directly to the business, and the business will file and pay their business tax directly to us through our Tentap portal. So licensing requirements here for a new license for a business with a physical location in a county. For under $3,000 in gross sales, of course, no business license is required. Between $3,000 and $10,000, a minimal business license is required. And for over $10,000, a standard business license is required and will prompt business tax to be owed. There's some special rules about contractors. We'll get into that later. They don't really fit quite into this model here, but more on that here in a few slides. For a renewal license, of course, to renew a standard license, the taxpayer will file and pay annual business tax. That business tax return will be due even if the business did not start or has no income. So basically, if a business gets a standard business license, they are required to file and pay business tax regardless. A minimal license may be obtained each year directly through the clerk's office. So some basics on general info on business tax here. Again, like I said, it is required for all entities with a standard business license, regardless of gross receipts. The tax rate is based on gross receipts and based on the business classification and whether they are a retailer or a wholesaler. The minimum tax due is $22 per license, per location, per year. And the filing, it's due on the 15th day of the fourth month following the fiscal year end. So that would be April 15th for a December 31 year end for a business. And something to note here on the business license, the expiration date of the license is actually the 15th of the month after the tax due date. So for December 31st year-end business, their business tax return is due on April 15th. That license will expire on May 15th. And a lot of times taxpayers are confused about this. They look at their license and think seeing that it expires on the 15th, that means they've got till the 15th of May to file and pay. If they were to wait until May 15th to file and pay business tax, there will be penalty and interest that will have built up over 30 days there. So important to understand that difference there. So here's a link to our new business tax manual. I'm going to take a moment here just really quick to stop sharing the PowerPoint and to take you over to that business tax manual. Close
I
that.
want to tell you folks that you definitely need the business tax manual in your life.
Yes, save it as a bookmark.
Katie's going to tell you why in just a second, but that's a unsolicited commercial for the business tax manual, which has tons of information in it, and we're glad to have it.
Right. I just started with taxpayer services in February. I'd previously been with vehicle services and then worked in our collections division for a while. But when I started at taxpayer services in February, this new business tax manual was the only resource I even needed to learn business tax. It's great. So from our main homepage, tennessee.tn.gov/revenue, you'll click on tax resources and then scroll down on the left-hand side here under legal resources, click on tax manuals. Scroll down, you can see all of our different tax types that have manuals here. The business tax manual, click the drop down and click for the PDF, you'll click on this button right here and it'll take you over to the manual. It's taking a minute to load. Well, that's not good. Maybe I've got too much stuff going on. All right, here we go. The new business tax manual, again, it was created in March of 2021, updated just a couple months ago. I'm just going to quickly kind of scroll through the table of contents just so you can see how exhaustive and extensive this manual is. Lots and lots of information here. Determining gross sales, information on all the classifications, filing requirements. You can click on the item in the table of contents to take you directly over to the page in the guide about that. And you may be aware also when you open a PDF in your browser, if you click Control F, it brings up a little find search field there. So if you wanted to search for a term, contractor, and enter. You can see here it's got lots of instances of that word, gosh, 140, but it'll just kind of start taking you through all the different instances of contractor. This is sourcing with regards to contractors, so on and so forth. Neat little tip there. I'm glad it took me over to this one. Chapter 11 in our manual is a great one. We'll reference that a little bit later. Industry specific guidance. This is a great chapter in our manual. You can see here there's information about contractors, agriculture, just lots of different very industry specific situations with regards to business tax, antique malls, transient vendors, food trucks, so on and so forth. So we're very excited about this manual. I hope you'll go there, save it as a bookmark, and utilize it. You'll find answers to most of your questions there. So let me switch back over to the PowerPoint. All right. So who's subject to business tax? In this chart here, you'll see both state business tax and the municipal level business tax. For Tennessee retailers, of course, Tennessee retailers with 10,000 plus in any county. Out-of-state retailers with 10,000 plus in Tennessee or with Nexus are subject to business tax. Tennessee contractors with 10,000 plus in their home county or $50,000 plus in gross sales in any other county are subject to state business tax, and out-of-state contractors with 10,000 plus in any county subject to the state business tax. I'm going to take a minute just to stop before I go on to the next slide because I haven't been looking at chat. Is everything getting answered in there? Is there anything we need to bring up from the chat?
These good folks have a lot of good questions. First of all, I think we need to tell Penny Petty she cannot comment anymore. She's been commenting too much. No, I'm just kidding. Penny, I love
We
you.
love
You
you,
know that.
Penny.
Yes, we're just messing with you. So anyway, I want to go back first of all to something that Travis had mentioned a second ago about auditing the businesses who register themselves for Tentap. He mentioned a lot of accounts have the wrong classification, like restaurants have 1A. As an example, and they have 1A because 1A is the first one that they can pick from a list or whatever. I'd love to say that we do this on a regular basis, but as I told Travis in the chat, when we see them, we'll try to reach out to them and try to tell them, hey, we think this is wrong. What do you think? Should we change this for you and that? And if they send us emails, of course, we try to address all problems when we're addressing their issue, but we don't really have a unit per se that goes through and perfects these sort of things too. So this brings up maybe one thing we should talk about too, about when you guys use your BIS online system too. And I think Katie has pointed this out in a couple of different cases too. You get these things that come in and people type stuff in and you try to process that record and it goes through, or you might have to call us or whatever. But when you see things that are out of line too, it would really be a good idea for you to address them just like it would be if our eyeballs were on them. So if you see somebody that's doing something kind of nutty when they have registered online before you push that record through, try to address that and do the best you can with it. It's not going to be perfect. It's just not. And state law, of course, tells these businesses that it's their responsibility to register properly. So if they don't have all the good information, they need to educate themselves or contact us or do something, right? But that's probably an important thing to point out there too. Now, Penny asks, is the state sending out to customers or the license out to customers, or do they come through our offices? All right, Penny. All right. No, we don't mail or send licenses to taxpayers through the state. No, we never do. In fact, it's not legal for us to do so because you're the licensing official. Okay. So you are responsible for that. Now, what we want you to do is to decide how you're going to handle that. The business licenses, for some of you, you decide that you're going to actually issue a manual mailed out license through BIS. That's fine. That's your decision. Some of you have said, I just want to approve the licenses on the business tax portal, which Katie's going to go through later. That causes the license to show up on the taxpayer's Tentap account, and then they can print their license. Okay, that's a pretty good choice in my opinion, but that again is your decision. Okay, you do what you want to do. All right. So that's how that works as far as that goes. But we at the state level don't issue business tax licenses because we're not supposed to. Let's see what Scott said. Scott says it would be nice if the state wouldn't let a business register with them until they get a business license locally first. Can't tell you how many people call us to ask to get an updated license. They're not in the system, but they say they've been paying taxes but never got a license with us to begin with. Yeah, that's true. Something I brought up to our bosses too is the fact that we have so many doors into our Tentap and TR3 systems that it makes it very challenging. So um, I also wish, like Scott does, that we pick one door or two doors and use those doors. But until we have all of these holes plugged, we're going to continue to kind of fight this sort of deal too. And it's a bit frustrating. So I'm going to agree with you on that, Scott. And I appreciate your comment on that too. And Penny agreed with that too. So did Mitzi. Okay. What else?
We've got one in here from Phyllis. I know most counties use BIS. How can the problem be resolved as far as the clerk's office getting the clearance license? We call DOR multiple times a day to see if taxpayers filed. 99% of the time they have paid, but you're not seeing it on your end in BIS.
Maybe we
So
should save that one, Katie. What do you think for the
yeah,
portal discussion?
yeah,
That's a
actually,
that's
we'll
a
get to that one,
that's a stay
Phyllis.
tuned thing.
Yeah,
And by the
okay.
way, Phyllis, we love y'all to death. We love talking to you, but we wish you wouldn't call us all day too.
Hopefully
Just
some of the
saying.
stuff we'll be fixing soon will relieve some of that, where you won't have to call us as much because things will start working a little better and you'll have the answers that you need. That's one of our goals.
And
uh,
Mitzi also asked, what's the option for the customer to print their license? I said there's no option for that. Yes, there is. As long as your county hasn't told us to turn off Tentap licenses, which most counties have not, almost all counties have not. So once you approve this through the business tax portal, it will show up on Tentap, and if they sign into their business tax account, there's a link that says view notices/licenses. And then you click on that, and lo and behold, every license that they need is right there. As long as you've approved it on the business tax portal on your side, it'll show up there, and it usually shows up the next business day. Okay.
Great. Thank you, Billy. All right, we'll go ahead and move along to the next slide for now. Keep putting your questions in the chat. That's great. We appreciate that. Out-of-state and nexus. Out-of-state entities are subject to state tax if they have nexus in Tennessee. That means they are organized or commercially domiciled in Tennessee, own or use capital in Tennessee, or have a bright line presence in Tennessee, which consists of any of these three, either receipts of more than 500,000 or 25% of their total receipts in Tennessee, more than $50,000 or 25% of total property by value in Tennessee, or more than 50,000 or 25% of compensation paid in Tennessee. And of course, that's becoming a bigger thing these days with a lot of people working remotely and people moving into our state in droves, which is a good thing, I think, at least. But a lot of companies have a lot of employees here now, so are going to be subject to this. So out-of-state entities with 10,000 plus in sales that have nexus and no physical location in a county, they are going to register directly with the state. All right, we're going to dive into classifications here. Of course, as I showed you in our business tax manual, lots more information in Chapter 5 of our business tax manual about classifications. Uh, each taxpayer is classified by its dominant business activity on a per location basis. So dominant business activity is defined as the business activity that is the major and principal source of taxable gross sales. In other words, it's based on the activity that generates the largest portion of a business's taxable sales. So class 1, this one has 5 subtypes, 1A, B, C, D, and E. The first one, as Billy mentioned, 1A. A lot of businesses get stuck in 1A just because it's the first option you can choose on the drop down. But that's food and beer for home preparation and consumption, except for delicatessens and candy at retail, and food brokerage services. 1B, lumber, building materials, tools, builders, hardware, those are your hardware stores. Farm equipment, plumbing, heating and air conditioning equipment, other hardware. 1C is hay, grain, feed, fertilizer, seeds, so on and so forth. Those are your co-ops. 1D, gasoline, diesel fuel and motor fuels at retail, and E is gasoline and diesel fuel at wholesale. Business tax class 2. includes the sale of these items. I won't go through each one on these classifications. You're probably pretty aware of what falls into what. I will say that this class 2 is the catch-all class. Basically the sale of any tangible personal property that's not specifically classified anywhere else will fall into class 2. Class 3, I'm definitely not going to read through all these, but these are some very specific, the law very specifically says that these businesses, sales of these items fall under class 3. Class 3 also includes the sale of services. There are some exempt services. We'll talk about that in just a minute. So, oops, there we go. Exempt services. This is an area that does provide some confusion, and I'm hoping that what the information I have here doesn't further confuse you, but it's something that helps me understand exempt services. So basically, sales of services are subject to business tax unless the law specifically exempts them. And the bullets you see here are services that are specifically exempt. If these businesses if this is their dominant business activity, no license is needed, no business taxes due, unless they're also making sales of tangible personal property or other taxable services. An example of this would be you see veterinary services is the last service listed on this list. If there's a vet's office that also has a little store in the front of their or in their lobby that sells leashes or toys, dog food, that kind of stuff, they would be subject to business tax for those sales, even though the sales of their veterinary services are not subject to business tax. So for these specific services, the business or individual does need to be licensed in this service field. I put links here to the SIC manual. The law in the Tennessee Code Annotated basically says these services that are parts of these SIC major groups are the exempt ones. So you can click on that link. I'm not going to go over to it right now, but if you want to go there later or save that link, it'll show you the major groups that, and I listed the major groups beside each bullet that you would go to see if a particular industry is exempt from business tax. So class 4 contractors, class 4 activities include all persons contracting, performing a contract, or engaging in constructing or improving real property, installing tangible personal property, providing exterminating services, selling livestock, receiving commissions from the sale of farm products belonging to others. I want to make note here that class 4 does not include landscaping and lawn care services. Those would fall under class 3. Of course, if there's a landscaper that is doing some major constructing or improving to the real property, excavating, building, maybe an outdoor room, that would become real property at that point. They would fall under contractors, but they're planting plants and mowing grass, that kind of thing, they're going to fall, those landscape and lawn companies are going to fall under class 3 services. Going to peek over at the chat real quick to see if we need to stop. Yes, we will be emailing this. Oh, Dan, you already answered that. We are going to be sending this presentation out to everybody. Let's see, I think everything else has gotten answered, Billy. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Hey, we do need to talk about this business license printed out of Tentap.
Okay.
Because I think there's some confusion on what this license in Tentap is and where it comes from. That business license will not show up for the taxpayer in Tentap unless the county clerk has issued a business license. Not to say that they have mailed one out, but if the county clerk office does not issue a license and put it into our Tentap system, the taxpayer won't be able to print this off.
Right. And again, like Billy said, I'm going to touch on this in a little while, but so for a renewal license, if you have not gone, if you're just renewing your licenses through BIS only, and you print it off in your office and send them a copy, or they're there and you give them a copy, that's not going to create a copy of their license for them to view on Tentap. You have to actually go into the business tax portal and approve each renewal through the portal in order for our system to put that license in their Tentap, for them to access it in their Tentap account.
That's 100% right. That's exactly right. And in other words, the clerk's action causes the license to be available. Okay. Whether you make that show up through the business tax portal on our website for the convenience of the taxpayer, or you choose to mail one out yourself. Okay. But one way or the other, it's the clerk doing something that's making the license show up. Okay.
So for that initial license, Billy, though, that is their BIS is speaking to our system. They don't have to do anything in the portal per se for that initial license to get issued out and also be available via the taxpayer's Tentap account. But it's for the
Yeah,
renewal license that they actually, that you as a clerk actually have to go into our portal and check that box on each one that's eligible for renewal to process that. The renewal
that's right.
license will only
That's
be.
right. And when we talk about the portal in more detail in just a little bit, I think we need to talk about some best practices that some of the clerk offices use that Katie, I know you've seen as you've gone out and visited a few clerk offices most recently, that can actually help you make sure all records are where they need to be. So yeah, we'll talk about that.
All right. So a little bit more about contractors here. I'm actually going to forego this slide to show you the next one, because the next slide puts all this information basically into a little chart. Again, there's a link over to our Business Tax Manual, Chapter 11, as in-depth information about contractors. But this is a little chart that I created. This is just the way my brain works. I like to see things like this. Helped me understand how licensing and state and municipal level tax works for in-state contractors and out-of-state contractors. I'm not going to go through all the details here, but you can kind of study that for just a moment and know again that this little chart will be available to you when we do send this PowerPoint around.
There's a
And
test on this at the end, y'all. So
no,
make
there's
sure you
not.
have all this memorized. Except don't. But it's still, I think it's very helpful to have this. And Katie did a good job of putting this together.
One thing to note here, Class 4 contractors will have a different location ID for the city and county. That's kind of against the grain with the way other businesses work, and obviously may have multiple cities and counties, depending on, most do actually have lots of different location IDs throughout multiple jurisdictions. Class 5, we're not going to spend too much time on this. Basically, 5A, industrial loan and thrift companies, 5B, natural gas marketers. Both of these classes, they're going to register directly with the Department of Revenue. Is that correct, Billy?
Say one more time. I got distracted. What were
That's
you
all right.
saying?
Class 5A and B both register directly with the Department of Revenue, right?
Oh yes.
Okay.
And by the way, there's not very many of them at all.
No.
But they know how to get a hold of us, and we work with them directly. No problem.
When I was in collections, I came across a collections case at one point that the lady had called and was wondering why she got a letter in the mail that she was in collections for, I think it was over $800 or something. She had gotten a business license, so she did owe something, but the business actually had never started. She had a thrift store, or got a business license. That was the intent, was to have a thrift store, and she got put under Class 5A. And the reason why the assessment was so large is because 5A, there's a flat fee of $400 per year in business tax that's owed for 5A, and a couple years of her not filing added up to a big assessment. So we were able to change that classification. Of course, she still was liable for not filing, but a lot less than 800 was what she owed. So some special scenarios here: antique malls, flea markets, gun shows, and auto shows. These are not subject to business tax, unless of course they have nexus in another way, or business license, unless they have a physical location. The county and municipality may impose a fee by resolution or ordinance, and that fee is $1 per booth per day and is paid directly to the county or municipality. Excuse me. This fee is in lieu of any business tax that would have otherwise been due. So the fee per day does not apply to a business that sells antiques at least 5 days a week from a permanent location. These businesses will be subject to business tax as a class 3 vendor. So for antique malls with separate booths but one common register, only the mall operator is subject to the business tax on all receipts from that location. Transient vendors. So transient vendors do not have an established location in Tennessee. There's some confusion over that. Very important to note that fact right there. A transient vendor, by definition, does not have a location in Tennessee. So thus they're excluded from business tax unless they otherwise have nexus. But they're subject to a $50 fee paid directly to the county or municipality for each 14-day period. So an example of this is a seller of tangible personal property based in Kentucky comes to Nashville for a week-long trade show, display and sell merchandise. The Kentucky seller will have to obtain a transient vendor license directly from the local city recorder or county clerk and pay the fee. There's more information about this in the chapter 11 of the manual. And a little question here: is a food truck considered a transient vendor? And the answer is no, not unless they would be if they are an out-of-state food truck. We have the next slide is going to dive a little deeper into food trucks, but transient vendors are out-of-state vendors. So regarding food trucks must be licensed for business tax and business tax in the jurisdiction where it is based. Food trucks must display their license when selling in other jurisdictions. However, if a food truck remains in a fixed location outside of its domiciled location for over 180 days, a license must be obtained in that jurisdiction. And that doesn't mean that they're coming to the same location in your county from the next county over. If they're coming to your county and setting up in the exact same location every single day, but they're driving back home or driving somewhere else, they still just need a license from their domiciled county. But if they actually keep that food truck there, if it's basically parked in that location for over 180 days, they will need to get a license from your county. Let's see, Mitzi said, does this include craft shows? So yes, I think this is regarding these antique malls, flea markets, gun shows, auto shows. Craft shows do fall into that. Am I correct, Billy?
Yeah, they would be that way. You know, they're selling on a temporary location, you know, at a temporary location. And if they are registered for business tax at their permanent location in Tennessee, then they don't have any other registration requirement with us or with the local county clerk, because you can go to a temporary location and sell stuff all the time. That's no problem at all. Um, Craft shows also, for sales tax purposes, have some unique things that they have to do too. So if you ever get a question about sales tax relating to that, make sure you refer them to us, because there's some special stuff we have to do regarding craft fairs and things like that. And this is the time of year that these people really get involved in this sort of thing, with the fall and Christmas season and all that too. So yeah, we get a whole bunch of that stuff. So yeah.
Oh, Billy, look, Carolyn Holmes says a fireworks stand that comes from another county, do they need a transient license?
Carolyn,
Fireworks, Billy's
Carolyn,
favorite.
Carolyn, I like you. You know what I mean? But please don't mention the word fireworks anymore, because it gives me heartburn. It makes me want to not have a good time. So let me just go ahead and talk about fireworks since we're talking. So look here. So if you're in Tennessee and you got a fireworks stand, you're probably registered in Tennessee and you have a permanent location. Okay. That's where all the sales need to go back to. You need to take that business license from that county clerk or that city where that permanent location is and have that in every one of your tents. Okay. You do not need to register with the local county or city because that's a temporary selling location. Okay. Just like we talked about, right?
Now, Billy, you're
Okay.
not talking about a permanent fireworks location somewhere, just where their business, that could be if they're a home-based business and they don't have a fireworks store somewhere in Tennessee, but
Right.
if they
Right.
are
We're
in
talking.
Tennessee,
Mhm.
right?
Right, because that's what it says is that temporary businesses locate or operating temporarily, like a food truck does, same thing you just talked about, right?
Mhm.
Can go from place to place or on a temporary basis and report everything back to their home county or city, right? Okay, the same thing goes with fireworks. Now, going to tell you one thing that's sort of weird. Okay, we have a couple of fireworks companies in Tennessee that have a little bit of a deal with the Department of Revenue that's been worked out, and they wish to register many locations with us. They have been approved to do that. If you ever run into those, you let us know and we'll investigate it. Okay. So I'm telling you what the thing is, and then I'm telling you what the other thing is. Okay. So, as you can tell, I don't enjoy talking about fireworks a lot for these reasons. So,
It's ruined the 4th of July for you, hasn't it,
I
Billy?
I love America and apple pie, but I don't like the fireworks. Okay,
Just not the tax part and licensing
not the tax
part.
part. That's right.
Right, right.
Okay, yeah, but that's the true scoop on fireworks. Okay.
All right, we'll just spend a minute here on some miscellaneous exemptions. There are certain entities that, under certain circumstances, are exempt from paying business tax. Very rare here, blind individuals with total blindness who own less than 25%, $2,500 of unencumbered property, own less than $2,500 worth of business capital. They're a Tennessee resident residing here and are the sole beneficiary. Disabled veterans who own less than 5,000 of unencumbered property, own less than 5,000 of business capital, citizen and resident of the Tennessee County, and sole beneficiary. So the link to the affidavit that they would need to complete, there's the link to that right there. And that affidavit, once they qualify and you eyeball that, you can retain that in your files. We do not need, the Department of Revenue does not need any information about that. They're not being registered for a business license or business tax. So we're kind of out of that. Just make sure you retain that affidavit on file in your office. All right, some common deductions on the business tax return: trade-in allowances, amounts paid to subcontractors, that's for class 4, sales of services delivered to customers out of state, sales of tangible personal property in interstate commerce, bad debts, certain taxes. This is just mostly for your information in case you ever get questions from taxpayers about this. Common credits, this is something, the most common credit is a personal property tax credit. That credit cannot exceed 50% of the amount of tax owed, and the credit must be for property at the location for the return. So, real briefly here, some taxpayer responsibilities. Each taxpayer must register for each location. Out-of-state taxpayers, as I mentioned earlier, register directly with us. And then, of course, certain businesses are only required to have one license per jurisdiction. We talked about this in the beginning about legislative updates. We've added micro markets to this little list here. Of course, contractors only need one license per jurisdiction. Out-of-state vending machine businesses, vacation rentals, mobile telecommunications. One important thing to note here is do not use the job site address as the location. And also vacation rentals can just use one location, just use the address for one of their rentals that's within the jurisdiction. I believe one time this past year we had a uh, address entered in that there was a contractor that was working on a bridge somewhere in Tennessee, and the address was just entered in as bridge over such and such river. Wasn't it something like that, Billy? That
Yeah,
address didn't work in our
it's
system.
really hard for us to mail things to bridges. We have a hard time doing that. The
Right,
postal service doesn't like that either. So yeah,
right.
it's important to get it right, guys. Yeah.
Yeah. So not the job site address, but the actual business location. Another taxpayer responsibility is keeping their contact information updated with both you guys and with us. Obviously, filing and paying the annual tax. This is real important. The note under here, paying an assessment does not give tax clearance. The taxpayer must file the returns for all periods, file and pay returns for all periods. There's some confusion about this often. So when there is a delinquency and the department sends an assessment letter to the taxpayer, they're going to put it, there's going to be an amount on there that's basically just an estimated amount. If they didn't file, we're just estimating. For example, with business tax, if they didn't pay their business tax for a year, it's typically $100 is what the estimate is for. A lot of times they'll think that that's just kind of, they won't read the letter fully and they'll think that it's just a bill that we're sending to them for $100 and they'll just pay the $100. And that does not give the taxpayer clearance. They may have a zero balance with us for the time being at that point, but they're not going to be able to get clearance and renew their license through you guys unless they actually file the return and pay the return to the Department of Revenue, pay the tax due. Another taxpayer responsibility is to close their account and file a final return upon the closure of the business. We'll get a little more in depth about that here, maybe in the next slide, coming up soon. Moving your business. If a business is moving within the same jurisdiction, it's just as simple as making an address change through their Tentap account, excuse me, or via written request to the Department of Revenue. Of course, again, if that gets changed in Tentap, that information is transferred over to the clerks via the BIS system. If you're changing jurisdiction, if the business is actually moving to a different jurisdiction, they're going to need to close the location, the business tax account for the location where they're moving from, and actually going to need to file a return for that closed location and then get a license and a location account for the new location. So a little bit more here on closing a business. If a business is closing all their locations, if they have multiple locations and closing all of them, a closure request along with the last return and payment should be received within 15 days. The screenshot you see here is what it looks like from the Tentap side when a taxpayer is logged into their business tax account. And clicks on additional actions. Actually, this is where you can see right there where it says licenses. When we were talking earlier about how they can view their license, that's where they would click. But it is also where you click to close your account. If a business is just closing one or some locations, that closure request should still be received within 15 days, but the taxpayer should wait until the normal due date to file and pay that return. Of course, all locations for businesses that do have multiple locations, they're all consolidated and filed on one return now in Tentap. So they've got some open, but have closed some. Just wait until that April 15th deadline is the due date for it to file for all locations, even if one of them is closed. They can close it in the system, then file when it's due. Check the chat real quick. Y'all are being quiet now because you know everything now, right? All right, let's see here. Billy, it's 10 after 10. This next section's going to take quite a while, so I think now might be a pretty good time to take a little 15-minute break before we deep dive into the business tax portal.
Break
So
time.
let's all step away for just a few minutes. It's 10:10 your time, Central Time, 11:10 Eastern Time. Let's come back at 10:25. If that works. Uh, Go check on things, grab a cup of coffee, take a little break, and we'll see you in about 15 minutes. I was just starting to talk and was muted. We're going to go ahead and get started, everyone, on the last half of the training.
Katie, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you.
Okay, good. I just wanted to do an audio check real quick because
Yes,
I was
sir.
doing some other stuff. Thank you.
You're good. All right, we're going to dive into this business tax portal stuff, y'all. So before we get started, just want to explain a few key terms with regards to some terms we're going to be using and that you see every day. This slide here kind of demonstrates the levels of ID types. An entity ID, and we're going to call this the taxpayer level, and the entity ID is going to be a social security number or FEIN. The tax account ID, this is the account level. For business tax, those ID numbers are going to end in -BUS. For sales tax accounts, the ID is going to end in a -SLC. And then we've got location IDs. We call this the profile level. This is an address for each registered location. That is what we call a location ID. So if you've got a business with multiple locations, they're going to be registered as an entity with their either social or FEIN. They would have a business tax account ID that ends in BUS. And then there's going to be multiple location IDs if they've got multiple locations. Those location IDs are going to be, again, specific to each address that they have a license for and are registered for. So this, the initial license process, we've kind of touched on this a little bit this morning so far. Based on the survey, the Clerks survey, 6% of new licenses are processed through the business tax portal. Found that interesting, with 94 processing directly through your local system, which for all counties is BIS. Basically, the process for issuing an initial license is the same at all counties. You're going to submit the applicant data to the Tennessee Department of Revenue via your local system. So you're either taking information on a paper business license application that you've got and you're keying it directly into BIS. I believe from what I've witnessed, if a taxpayer registers or applies online through your website, that information that they're registering with gets automatically entered into your BIS system, and you open it up and have to still click through and approve it. But basically you're submitting it for approval with the Department of Revenue in BIS, and you're either going to get a wonderful little green light that says submitted to TDOR, or you're going to get the dreaded red not submitted to TDOR. And I know that that is probably the biggest frustration that you guys have. It's what we get, I think, the most calls about, is when a application does not submit to us, and we're going to talk about some troubleshooting on that. But back over to the green light is when it does submit to the Tennessee Department of Revenue, we do recommend that you check our business tax portal to verify a location ID. Now I know that if you don't see, if a location ID does not populate for you in your BIS system, when it submits, you may get that green light but not get a location ID. We do get a lot of calls and emails and online tickets about this. One thing that you can do before you call us, if you want to take the time to do so, is check that business tax portal to see if there's a location ID. And here in a couple minutes when we watch a video, there's one video that we're going to watch here in a minute that'll show you where you can check a location ID. Once it submits and you've got that location ID, you issue and print your license. If it's not submitted, then it's troubleshooting time. And again, we've got a little chart here that we're going to introduce to you in a few slides that'll hopefully help you a little bit with some troubleshooting. But at this point, until we work with BIS and get our systems jiving a little bit better, there's still going to be some of these troubleshooting issues that arise, and we're working on that. I can promise you that. I do want to make note of what you see in the little red box down here. Please, please, please do not proceed with issuing a license until a transaction submits to us. Lots of problems can arise when you just kind of push it on through and issue that license. If it does not submit to us, it's going to become a problem, whether it's a year later when they go to renew and they're not in our system. Lots of different scenarios can arise there that are, none of them are good. Just please take the time to make sure that the transaction submits to us. Now, if you want to go ahead and issue the license on your end before it gets submitted to us, that's your prerogative for sure, and at your discretion. But we would recommend for sure to at least go in later, whether you have to set that aside and go in later at a later point and do the work to make sure it actually ends up getting submitted to us. Quick question here in the chat. I see Aileen. Hi, Aileen. Where will we find the presentation once it's posted? We are going to, for now, we're just going to send this presentation out to all the county clerks and all the individual email addresses that registered for these trainings. We'll send you the presentation, but we're also going to post a link to it and post the video of the training. And we'll let you know when that link is posted and exactly how you get there. As soon as we put it out, we'll send word out to you guys about that.
Yeah, but there's on our website, there's the county clerk resource page where we have business tax, occupancy tax, sales tax, all this other stuff. So it will be on one of those links out
Right.
there. So no problem. Glad to do it for you.
Yep. All right. So moving right along here to the renewal license process. Looking at these pie charts here, you can see that based on the clerk survey that we sent around, 63% of counties are renewing licenses through the business tax portal. That's great. In terms of printing licenses, 40% are printing the renewal licenses directly through your local system, 38% printing them through the portal. We've got 22% of counties that responded that are saying they don't print the licenses. So I think some counties are saving on some paper there and just letting it, just clicking the button and processing it through and letting the taxpayers access their license directly through Tentap. So we've got three different scenarios that I'm aware of, at least at this point, just from hearing from the counties and from visiting some county offices. The three different scenarios for renewing licenses. First one, a clerk uses the local system only to issue and print renewal licenses. This is the scenario that we mentioned earlier, that if you're using BIS only, then, which is fine, it's not going to get issued to them through their Tentap account. The only way to get a license issued to the business through their Tentap account is if that license gets pushed through the business tax portal. So scenario 2, clerk uses the business tax portal only to issue and print renewal licenses. There are some counties that do that. And the other is, I think probably the most common, a clerk uses the local system, so you're processing it through the through BIS and then also going into the portal and checking the boxes in there to issue it through the portal as well. I'm going to bring up now, I can't remember who it was that had a question earlier about needing to call us constantly because their business is showing up as not eligible for renewal in your system. You call us and we say, yep, they're good to go. You can push it through. I'm not sure why that happens. It's probably a BIS and Department of Revenue systems not speaking right to each other. But if you go into the portal, you can see there if one of your taxpayers is eligible for renewal. So actually, I think it was Phyllis maybe who asked that question. Phyllis, if you're still in here now, I think it was Phyllis. I'm scrolling to see who asked that question, but whoever it was, are you using just BIS to issue renewals would be a question I have for you. Do you check the business tax portal to see if a business is eligible for renewal? If you're not checking the portal for that, I would say if you want to save yourself a phone call, go check the portal to see if a business, okay, Phil, do not use the portal. All right, so here in a minute, we're going to show you how to use the portal to see if a business is eligible for renewal. So once you learn that, you can kind of save yourself a call if you
Hey,
choose to do so.
hey, Katie,
Mhm.
Scott had a question too. He says, how did we set it to let everyone print their own license and need love not to have to print licenses? Guess what, Scott? Unless you have told us to not put those on Tentap, that's already happening.
Mhm.
So they're out there. They can see them on Tentap right now. So as long as you're in the business tax portal and you're renewing or you're updating this business tax portal, in the way Katie's describing, it's happening. So you sending out a license is redundant. Now, Penny pointed out in one of her comments that she likes the opportunity to have her name on that license. That's okay. We're not telling you what to do or not to do. You know, it's up to you about what you want to do. And Penny, like I told you before, if you do want that cut off for your county, we do respect what you're saying, and you can do whatever you'd like to, but I do need a letter on your letterhead on that, because we have to keep that as a source document to show that on this date, this county clerk wanted this to happen, therefore we did it. So yeah, that's what's up.
Right. All right, let's see here. I'm going to share with you a video. It's a short training video. Now, I'm going to show you two videos. Both are available when you log into the portal under your Learning Manager. But let's see here. We're going to talk about how to renew a license in the portal. I'm going to fast forward the beginning here because it's just some. I'm sorry, y'all. Okay, so that was an example of how you would walk through the steps to renew multiple licenses. Now, if you don't want to print them, then just you can go into that print file the next day, and if you want to save it as a file and save it on your in your hard drive or save them, you don't have to, or you can open it up and print all of the renewal licenses the next day. All right, the next video we're going to watch is about updating a business's information. Now, just to be clear on this, if a business needs to, most data that a taxpayer is needing to update, they'll need to do through they can always do through Tentap, but just updating their contact information or their mailing address is something that you can help them with through the portal, and I'll show you that video now. I'm sorry, I'm going to pause real quick. I wish that the video had stayed paused. We're on the screen. On this report that she's talking about in this video, this list of locations report, that is where you can also go in to check a location ID number when you're wanting to verify if it did submit to the state, or you're needing a location ID number to plug in over there in BIS. You'll go about it this same way with this same report, the list of locations report, and then you can just search within the report for whatever business you're looking for. All right, we've got a few questions that have come in here. Scott, what's the email to request access to the portal? We haven't logged in for a few years. It's a good question. I've got it on the very next slide here. There's a link to the access form if you need access. Of course, you can't see the website address right here. That is a link that you can access later when you get the PDF of this, but it is on that county clerk resource page that Billy mentioned. If you go to tn.gov/revenue and scroll all the way to the bottom of the screen, you'll see a link that says for county clerks. That's where you can get the link to the access form. And you would email completed forms to tr3.security@tn.gov. We want to definitely stress here, do not share usernames and passwords. Each person that accesses the portal really does need to have their own username and password to get in. We did hear from lots of clerks in the survey that they wish that there wasn't that two-step verification process to be able to get into the portal. It'll give you that security code. You've got to go check your email and then put it in. Unfortunately, there's no way around that. Even Department of Revenue employees have a two-step verification before we're able to get into our system. So that is
Hey,
definitely always required. Yes.
hey, Katie. So Penny pointed us back to a question that Rose had a few minutes ago too. Rose said when we check the portal, it will show the city as being cleared, but not the county. I think what we would have to do is look at that on a case by case basis and see why that's the case, because um, I don't know exactly what to say about that. I'm not saying that Rose is wrong, but if the record is there in the to do this, what we call the bulk renewal, the whole idea of getting these pushed through the system, then it ought to be there because the county has paid too. So we probably want to see a few examples of that. So if y'all want to email us or call us on a couple of those, we can try to investigate that a little bit further. That's very interesting and it's a very good question. Okay. But on the TR3 security stuff, if you haven't used the portal in a while, yeah, it'll lock you out. So if you just send an email to tr3.security@tn.gov, put your DGD number in there and your name and say, hey, I've been locked out of the portal. Can you unlock me? And they'll pop back in just a little bit and say, okay, you're unlocked. You're ready to go.
Let's see, Mitzi Bowen asked, when they update in the portal, that information is not updated in our system, just the state system. So that's a great question. When anything's updated in the portal, or if a taxpayer updates their information themselves in Tentap, we are sharing that data with BIS. So our systems are syncing up and actually real time. It used to be an overnight batch, but real time the system syncs up. So if you update it in the business tax portal, or again, if a taxpayer updates it through the Tentap portal, it will transfer through based on that location ID to your system as well.
Yeah, just real quick on that. That's the way the system should work, and we believe that it does work that way. Of course, we're our friends at BIS. That's really their system. It's not our system. Um, one thing that I've told city clerks, especially city clerks, and I guess some county clerks too, is that our database, which is called TR3, is the state's database. That's where we have all of our tax records, and where you're a user of that database. Katie's a user, I'm a user, all of our county and city clerks that have access are users too. So we share that responsibility to update that database and make the changes through whatever system that we're using. So when you encounter problems and stuff like that, like Katie had mentioned earlier, it's so important not to ignore it. A lot of y'all are very diligent about contacting us. Some of you on the call today are regular users. You call us, you email us and stuff. That's what we want. We would rather address the problem now than to let them stack up and become more of a problem later. Thankfully, we have less problems now than we've had in a long time. So I think that part is better. But I do think, quite honestly, that, and this goes back to the survey data that Katie mentioned earlier, it's pretty clear that our BIS component of this is probably lacking. And I'm again not trying to throw anybody under the bus, because BIS folks are good folks. But at the same time, I think the clearance part of that is not functional, and Katie did some research on that and found that to be true as well. But that's okay. We're just here to help you, and hopefully we can bring the whole system a little bit better up later on, working closely with BIS. Okay.
So, Aileen put in here, we would really like someone to come out to our office and do some hands-on training to make sure we're up to date. They have multiple new employees that could not attend. So, Aileen, we would love to visit and come help your county. I can work it in at some point. Anyone that wants to visit, I can't promise it could be right away. We've got budget stuff and logistics to consider, but absolutely would love to talk to you about finding a time to come visit at your request and help your staff.
Right. And if you would, just email me and copy Katie on that. Because what we can do is we can let our bosses know about the request, and then that's how we can proceed. And we're very willing to come help anybody that needs help. Absolutely.
Right. Billy, I don't think I have anywhere in this presentation what our email addresses are, so I'm going to go ahead and throw that out there. Maybe type it in the chat. Billy's
I'll,
is
I'll I'll put
Billy.
it in. I'll put it in
Okay.
chat. Yeah, that way they'll
Billy.trout
have.
at tn.gov and then katie.julian at tn.gov, and he'll type those in there for you. All right, we're going to go through some business tax portal tips here. When you are searching the portal, there is a way to search if you've only got partial or missing information, and it's by using what we call a wildcard in the search. Basically, in the search field, if you want to return all, if you search, for example, star or asterisk SON, that will return all names that end in SON. Searching for ANDE asterisk SON returns all names that begin with an ANDE and end with SON. And if you put an asterisk around the whole term, it returns all instances of the word Anderson, no matter if it's in the name, address, email address. Also with searching, commas is kind of an interesting thing, when to use them and when to not. When searching for an address, you want to use commas to separate out the parts of the address. The example here is making sure that you put a comma between the street, city, and state there in order to return results. When you're searching for a name, you want to use commas. For example, you would want to enter the name Marla Anderson as Anderson, comma, Marla. And on the flip side of that, do not use a comma when searching for a business name. If you've got them in your system as Research, comma, Inc., you want to eliminate that comma when you're doing the search for that customer's business name and just type in Research space INC with no comma in order to get results there. So filtering bulk renewals, this was a big issue that we heard from you in the surveys, how you don't want to have to, when you go into bulk renewal, you see all the minimals in there, you see all the delinquent records. There's a way you can filter out, so it kind of takes some time out of that process. In the little green filter box that will appear above your bulk renewal list, if you want to just go ahead and get rid of all the minimal records out of there, you would type into that filter field minimal equals false, F-A-L-S-E. And that'll go ahead and take out all the minimals. Same with delinquents. If you want to go ahead and take out the delinquents, it's delinquent equals false. And if you want to filter out both, which in essence would basically just leave you with all businesses that are eligible for renewal on that bulk renewal list, you would type in minimal equals false, and then the word A-N-D, delinquent equals false. And then at that point, like I said, you're just left with all of your businesses that are eligible to renew, which means they've filed and paid and are good to go with us. And you can just click the select all and process those maybe a lot quicker, especially for your bigger counties that don't want to just go through and sift line by line through there, clicking the renewals for the ones that are not minimal and are not delinquent. Easy way to do that there. All right, so the next few slides, I'm going to just kind of quickly fly through them, but I'm hoping that this is a reference that once you get a copy of this, you can use in your offices. This is troubleshooting. Basically, what the issue is, who or what to contact, and some notes. Some of these things we've already gone over. What about if a business is moving? If ownership structure changes? I'm just kind of touching on a few here. If a business is set up under the wrong classification, the business has a closed account in the system and they're opening a new location. Situs issues, these are all instances where you would need to contact us. Multiple location IDs for the same address, contact us. Very common situation, the last item here on this page, an error that a duplicate record exists for a taxpayer. That's definitely something to call us about. You can add the location directly into the business tax portal. We're not going to go into that today just for lack of time, but there's a video in your business tax portal learning manager about how to just add a location directly into the portal. That's probably not something you're going to do at this point because you're wanting to add that location and add a license for there directly into your BIS system because of taking in cashiering the payment for that. But anyways, probably the best thing to do there is going to be to call us. An error, which is a pretty common error for individual account, exists for a taxpayer. That's another one where you have to call us. This is likely the issue, likely that a taxpayer has a Social Security number and that Social Security number is already associated with an individual account in our system, which means they had a whole income tax account or a professional privilege tax account. And we actually physically have to go into our system into TR3 and change it over. So contact us about that. Registering a single member LLC with a Social Security number. As you're all probably aware, sole props and marital joint accounts are registered with Social Security numbers. Generally speaking, all other account types are registered with an FEIN, except single member LLCs. You're not able to enter, if they do want to register with a Social Security number, which they by law can, you're not able to do that in your system. You'll have to contact us if a single member LLC is wanting to register with a Social Security number. So just going to kind of quickly scroll through these so you can eyeball this. And again, hopefully this will be a helpful resource and we will update it and tweak it as time goes on as well. So let's see, we've got some more questions in here, I think, Billy, before we move on to sales tax. Let's see.
Okay,
here.
let's take a look here and see.
Excuse me.
Rose, when we issue a county license, it shows up on the grid again as needing to be issued. This happens quite often. That sounds like BIS, Katie, right?
Rose, are you talking about your grid in the business tax portal? Are you saying you've issued it in your BIS system, but you go into the business tax portal grid and see that needs to be issued there? Is that what you're referring to?
And Kim Boyer, she tagged onto that, and she says, yes, Rose, we may issue a new license on one day and then receive the renewal license the very next day. Okay. And Rose says yes.
Okay, so I think Rose is saying yes to when I asked her. She's renewing that license through BIS and then goes into the portal and sees it in there as needing to be renewed. So this is an example, if I'm understanding your question correctly, of if you're issuing that renewal license through BIS, that does not issue it through our system. They're still good to go in our system. They've got a valid, their business tax account is in good standing. The only way to issue it through our system, which means it gets sent over to their Tentap account, is to go in and actually click through that process. That the first video we watched, the bulk renewal video, that's how you will renew them through our system. I hope that makes sense. I know this is kind of confusing. Did that answer your question, Rose? So Phyllis says, so you're saying when we issue a manual license through BIS? Yes. When you issue that manual license just through BIS, that's fine to do, but it is not going to issue the license through our system until you go into the business tax portal, into the bulk renewal, and check those boxes and process it. All right. Are you guys ever going to completely sync with BIS in the portal? That's a great question, Mitzi. We are working on it. That's all I can say at this point is that it's a priority of ours. It's a priority of our leadership. And first identifying why and where the systems are not syncing up is the key, and we're figuring that out every day now and kind of gathering what we can on our end, and you know, it's not going to be an overnight process. It's going to take time, but it's a goal of ours to have the systems work a lot better together.
Yeah, Katie and I have spent a lot of time talking to our bosses about this problem. And by the way, it wasn't just yesterday or the week before. This is like multi-months ago about the issue. So, Mitzi, we're in your corner. We're in all the clerks' corners about that. We realize that if we were able to improve this the way it needs to be, it would cut down on a lot of effort on your part, but also cut down on a lot of phone calls to us, which we don't mind taking your call. That's fine. But wouldn't it be so much easier if it really worked? That's what we think. And I think that's what you're saying too, Mitzi. And we're in the same boat with you, my friend. Trust me.
So I think Kimberly, you say you're talking about not for renewals, but for the new licenses issued. Are you saying that you're issuing a new license and then the next day you can go into the portal and see that they're eligible for renewal? Is that what you're referring to there? Might wait for a minute for that response. We might want to spend a few minutes here before we move on to sales tax just to make sure that we're all on the same page as well as we can be at this point, with regards to the business tax portal. So I'm not seeing a response there on that yet. I'm not quite sure if I answered the question or not. Okay, well, for now, I'll go ahead and move along for the sake of time over to sales tax, but feel free to pop back in. We know that getting some of these business tax portal questions answered is priority. So even though we're moving along to sales tax briefly here, keep putting your questions into the chat if something comes up about anything we've talked about up to this point. All right, sales tax. A couple of resources here. You may be aware of our sales and use tax guide for county clerks for automobiles and boats. You're gonna, here's a link directly over to it, but you're gonna find that guide in the same place where the business tax manual is from our homepage. You'll click on tax resources, and then over on the left-hand side under legal resources manuals, you'll find this guide there. There's also a great military manual under in the manuals section. Excuse me. We also have a webinar, a sales and use tax county clerk webinar that we, let's see, really that was about a year ago or so that you did that webinar. That's posted here at this site right here.
Yeah, it was, I think maybe last January or so, but yeah, basically, and it's still
Okay.
there. All the stuff is still very pertinent. Sure is.
So Phyllis, your question here about warranties, we're going to get to that in just a minute. That's a very good question. Lots of stuff on bills of sales that can be confusing to suss through. Basically, a little overhead view here of sales tax for county clerks. You're going to look at, is the transaction subject to sales tax? Either yes or no. If it's no, that means it's exempt. You're going to need to provide proof of that exemption, whether it be an affidavit, legal document, military orders, whatever that may be. If it's not, if they don't need to pay sales tax on it, then it stops there other than providing proof and sending that in, scanning that in. So if the transaction is subject to sales tax, the next question is going to be, has it been paid? You're going to look at that bill of sale. Yes, it has been paid. You're going to provide that proof of tax paid, which is the bill of sale. If it has not been paid, you are going to collect the tax owed. Just that simple, right? We'll try to take some of the guesswork out of that for you. So exempt transactions, obviously sales to non-resident purchasers, a seller purchaser affidavit of exemption for motor vehicles, boats, and vessels sold for removal from Tennessee is required there, also known as the 3-day affidavit. Sales to members of the armed forces, we'll dive a little deeper into that here in a few minutes. And of course, other miscellaneous exemptions for any of these, whether they're government or agriculture, so on and so forth, you'll just, again, need to make sure you provide proof of their exemption. And gifts, if there is a gift, as Billy's mentioned lots of times throughout these trainings, a gift is a gift is a gift, basically. If they say it's a gift and they say there's no consideration for it, we recommend taking that at face value. They're signing an affidavit under penalty of perjury. If you have any doubts about the fact that it might not be a gift, or maybe just if you're questioning that, you can feel free to flag that transaction and provide the documentation to our discovery unit with audit. But at any rate, the affidavit is required if you're exempting them, if they're exempted from sales tax. So here's where we're going to talk a little bit more about the military exemption. We get lots of questions about military exemptions. Whether you're a kind of visual or like to see a chart or a checklist here, there's two different ways of looking at this. Basically, when you're looking at does an applicant qualify for a military exemption, you're looking at on the date of the vehicle purchase, is that applicant active duty, full-time, stationed in Tennessee, either member of Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, or Coast Guard, or the Tennessee National Guard Reserves? Or are they a National Guard or reservist stationed in a current recognized combat zone? We did get a situation arose very recently where a member of the Alabama National Guard was looking to get a military exemption, sales tax exemption, and our legal office determined that the law states that it has to be the Tennessee National Guard. But let's say, okay, so if you answered yes to one of those check boxes there, you'll move on. Next question is, does the applicant qualify? So the application for title and registration is either in the name of the qualifying military member or jointly owned by the military member and one of the following. spouse, parent, grandparent, great-grandparent, child, grandchild, or great-grandchild. This is a little bit different than the lineal relative rules in terms of transfers. Non-qualifying co-owners would be a sibling, a step-parent, or step-child. Not sure why there, probably just, but that's what the law says. So if you check one of those boxes that the applicant qualifies, then you'll move along to the next step, which is, does the vehicle qualify? Basically, vehicles that do not qualify for sales tax exemption are going to be leased vehicles, semi-trucks, boats, and trailers. Another handy dandy little chart here that I created that hopefully you'll find helpful. Basically, it's what documentation is required based on the orders here, just to work through the first couple. Permanent change of station document. You want to make sure it's in order. And is that document alone sufficient? Yes. So in other words, no additional documentation is necessary. Request and authorization for PCS, same. Make sure it's in order. And is it alone sufficient? Yes. If they give a PCA, permanent change of assignment, yes, checkbox there for it's in order, but that alone is not sufficient. An LES, leave earning statement, or other documentation is necessary to show where the service member is stationed. So I'm not going to go through all of those, but hopefully that chart will be helpful for you when figuring out what you need. I know that military orders can be confusing to read. Maybe this will take a little bit of the guesswork out of that for you. Here's another chart that, again, is going to be updated more, and we'll keep working on this, but hopefully just another good tool that you can use for what documentation would be required for different exemptions and different types of transfers here, transferring from an individual to a lineal relative. Of course, the affidavit of non-dealer transfers, the documentation required there. If it's a gift from an individual to an individual, same form is used there. A spouse transfer from one spouse to another spouse. In the case of divorce, you'll just need documentation, a court order, divorce decree, so on and so forth for that. Again, not going to go through each of these. When you get the copy of this, hopefully it'll be a resource that you can use. All right, now we're going to get into this bill of sale stuff and dive into some motor vehicle stuff here. Proof of tax paid. So you're looking at a bill of sale here. What is included in the sale price of a vehicle? Of course, the vehicle itself, document fees, processing fees, business tax, any accessory that's already attached to the vehicle. Manufacturer rebates are included as part of the vehicle's selling price. Down payments are included, still part of the vehicle's sales price. Not included in the sales price. Now this is going to come into play when you're looking at single article, and I'll explain this a little bit later in the next slide, but not included in the sales price of the vehicle are title and registration fees, extended warranty and service contracts. Now they are taxed separately. Phyllis, for your question there, and the next slide will detail that a little more. Roadside assistance, it's not considered part of the sales price, but it still is taxed separately. Paint and wheel protection plans, taxed separately also. Wheel and tire protection plans, taxed separately. Gap insurance, not subject to tax at all. Trade allowance is not included in the sales price of the vehicle, dealer discounts, and any accessories not already installed on the vehicle at the time of purchase. Single article application. This is any item that is considered by common understanding to be a separate unit. With regards to what you're dealing with, that is a car, for sure. Car is considered a single article. So is a couch, dining room table, so on and so forth. But for our purposes, we're just going to talk about vehicles and boats, of course, here. Sales price must be over $1,600. The first $1,600 of the sales price is subject to whatever your local tax rate is. This is a little bit different for Hamblin County. which that threshold there is $300, even though the city of Morristown is $1,600. Hancock County also, it's the first $375. Now the next $1,600, or the difference between $3,600 and $1,600, is, oh wait, that would be, I think I might have done my math there wrong, didn't I? I think that should say 3,400. Is subject to the state single article rate of 2.75. That's a flat rate. And then the entire purchase price, taxable price, is subject to the state rate of 7%. We love single article, don't we? I think Billy told me that we're the only state that has single article application. Ugh. Just to complicate things for us. Here's looking at a way to break down single article. Won't read all this here. Let's see here. Basically, a person in Chattanooga buys a new car for $25,000. The breakdown here: state state sales tax, I'm sorry, would be $1,750. Now that's 7% of the entire purchase price. The local single article rate, so for Hamilton is 2.25. So you're going to do 1,600 times 2.25 and you get $36. The state single article is going to be taken off the next $1,600 of the purchase price. So that will be 44. Add it all up. That's the total sales tax due for the single article.
Hey, let's interrupt here for just a quick second.
Yes.
Well, Phyllis, how about GPS, etch guard, and theft registration? Here's the thing, my good friends, and Miss Phyllis and everybody else. There is no way that Katie and I can list you all the goofy stuff that they put on car invoices. Okay. So what we can do is categorize this back to what Katie was saying earlier into different categories. So if it's attached to that car and it's part of the sale, it's more pretty much just subject to tax. Okay. So a extended warranty, as an example, is not attached to a car, it's a piece of paper, right? So it's taxed separately and that kind of stuff. Title and registration fees, not subject to tax. Gap insurance, not subject to tax. Why? Because it's insurance, and insurance is never subject to sales tax, no matter what insurance it is in state law. Okay. So anyway, there's reasons and rhymes for this sort of stuff here too, but these add-on sort of things, if they're part of the actual vehicle, then they're going to be taxed in that particular way. Otherwise, they are probably taxed separately. If it's a completely separate item. Okay.
Which still has to be considered in to the whole mix, as we'll talk about on this slide.
Yes,
But just with
indeed.
regards to that single article application, the
Mhm.
single article is the vehicle. So anything that's coming along with that vehicle. So yeah, if there's GPS in there, that's an installed
Yeah.
device
So
in the
this
vehicle.
slide will tell you a lot about that, won't it, Katie?
I think so. Yeah. Again, it won't bring up every single situation, but I like you said, Billy, just looking at it as what's considered part of the sales price of that unit. So, okay, let's just dive into this example here. Got a customer located in Davidson County. They need to, let's say they're going to owe sales tax to the county clerk. They haven't paid it yet. Got a vehicle price of $35,000. There's a dock fee that needs to be added. A rebate. Do not add or subtract that, just a third-party payment there. A trade-in allowance will be subtracted out, which basically puts the total vehicle sales price at $25,300. Because we added the 300 and then we took out 10,000. So this is where we're going to start for calculating our single article tax. 25,300, 7% of that whole amount. First 1,600 is taxed single article local sales, 2.25. Next 1,600 at the state single article rate of 2.75. So the total tax due for just the vehicle there is going to be 1,851. Now we're going to look at those other items that are taxed separately. So they're just not, we're still going to charge sales tax on them, but we're not including them up there in that vehicle price with consideration for the for the single article. They're going to be taxed separately. Extended warranty, roadside assistance, paint protection, all those things add up to 2,950. So we're going to take 9.25%. That's the state and local tax rate there. And that's an additional $272.88. So we're adding that to the tax that was due on the vehicle. So 1851 was the tax due for the vehicle, and the non-vehicle items tax due there is 272.88. Adds up to 2,043.88. That would be the tax due for this bill of sale. Hopefully that is a helpful example for you.
Yeah, and just to reiterate this real quick, under the other items section there, like you're seeing, just just know that this person went to the car dealer to buy a car, right? So that's most of what we're talking about. There's no question about it. But when they were at the car dealer, they also decided to buy an extended warranty. They also decided to buy a roadside assistance plan, which is not a car. They decided to buy a paint protection plan, which is not a car. So that's the breakout there. That's why it's taxed separately, is because it's not a car. But they decided to buy other things at the car store when they bought their car. If that makes any sense at all. Okay.
All right, we got a lot of questions in chat. I'm going to go ahead and kind of wrap things up with the presentation, and then we'll get to a bunch of these questions that have come through over the past few minutes. All right, you probably already have this information, but if you need us, obviously our website, tn.gov/revenue. Here is the email to send us a message at revenue.support@tn.gov. The clerk line, now this is for clerks only. Please don't give it to taxpayers. The clerk line is 615-253-0704. We've got a great FAQ section on our website. If you've never been there, it's revenue.support.tn.gov. You can also get to that just from our homepage. If you click on, I think it's Revenue Help from our main homepage. If you've never been to that area, I highly recommend it, especially the business tax section, the Tentap section. Lots of great information. If you search in there and can't find an answer to it, I'd be shocked. Now there are some rare situations that something may not be addressed, but between a business tax manual and our upcoming sales tax manual, new sales tax manual, and revenue help, we really feel like we've got some pretty exhaustive resources now out there for both general public and county and city offices that is just very helpful. Okay, so let's get into some of these questions that have come through, Billy. Let's see, I don't even know how far back to go because I've been
Well,
running
I
my
think
mouth.
I think we're fairly caught up here. One I did see that Eileen had. So we do collect tax on all of those listed tax separately. We just add them together and charge tax on the separate credit. Yeah, that's basically right. And what you'll find is that most of these dealers have already calculated this tax correctly. So it's just a matter of making sure that they did if it's a dealer sort of transaction. Now, on third party sales, you're not normally going to have this kind of stuff we're talking about. They're just buying a car from a guy, right? There's, that's not an issue. They're not going to buy these other sorts of things. Although I guess it's possible that, somebody could buy, another set of rims when they buy a car from somebody off the street. I guess that's possible. If that's the case, then we're just going to be taxing the car on that, and the rims would be a separate item, as far as that goes too. Trying to think if there was any other things here. And Penny, you said, can you please email you something on the dealers giving cars away? I'll try to find something on that and try to send that to you. Okay. Thanks. It's just that it doesn't happen that often. When it does, it's very rare. Audit will consider these sorts of things to be taxable in most cases because, like I said in chat, you know, if a car dealer gives a car away to, you know, some sort of charity, they're probably doing it so they can get some sort of good faith advertisement out of it or whatever. You know, it's great that people do stuff like that, but you know, it's just not normally a thing that happens. So usually charging sales tax on that is the right thing to do. Okay. So that's that point too. Trying to see if there's any other questions we haven't touched.
I'm looking through them now too. I think we've,
Let's see.
just so you know, y'all, if we did miss your question or if you come up with a question later, please feel free to email me or Billy or send your question to revenue.support@tn.gov. Um, as all of this sinks in and resonates with you, you may,
Right.
you're like me, you'll come up with a question in the middle of in the middle of the night, you'll wake up with one.
Yeah, so we just want y'all to use these resources that you see on your screen here when you come up with stuff or whatever. And a lot of you reach out to us on a regular basis, and we do appreciate it. Um, we're always there to help you. That's what we do, you know, as far as that goes. So,
I'm going to
so
go
there you
ahead
go.
and share my, can you see my browser right now?
Yes. Uh-huh.
Okay, let me close out of some of these things. Since we've got a couple minutes left, everyone feel free to keep putting questions into the chat if you've got any here in these, while we've got about 5 minutes left. But I was going to show you where on our website, I was just talking about going to our FAQs section. So here we are at tn.gov/revenue. And Revenue Help is the resource I was telling you about. This may be a good link, a good hyperlink to bookmark and use all this great information about Tentap. I know that some of you like to provide hands-on assistance to your taxpayers in your county. If you want to help them with Tentap, understanding a little bit about it might help you, or at least just knowing that this is here as a reference so you can refer people over to this page. Under taxes, you can click on business tax. And you can see here, I'm going to expand this. There are 74 business tax questions and answers here. You can type up into the search field if you're searching for any particular, need to know about a particular thing, but you can also just, I recommend perusing what all we have articles about here in this section. There's 3 pages worth here. Again, I think it said 74 separate articles about business tax. So again, between this and our business tax manual, now of course, also within taxes, there's a sales tax section here. Same thing, just lots of, whoop, there we go. Wow, 183 sales tax articles, lots of stuff here. If you can't find the answers between our FAQs and our guide or guides and manuals, then let us know because it might be something we need to add to our FAQs. So go ahead and stop sharing that. Billy, is there anything else on our website we've talked about as I was kind of rushing through some slides for time that might be good to show them now?
Katie, show them, go back to the main part of the website, scroll
Okay.
down to the bottom, and let's
Oh,
look at the county clerk area where a lot of their resources are. So
okay.
local governments there you see for county clerks. When you click this, look, you've got all kinds of stuff here, business tax, occupancy tax. We throw stuff out here all the time. And we want you to take advantage of that. Not that we wouldn't love talking to you in your lovely voices or getting your emails, but so convenient to just be able to pull this information up. Look at sales tax on motor vehicles, Katie. A couple of pops down there a little bit lower. This is a link to the webinar that we did earlier that blows some of this other stuff that we just talked about out into some more detail. So it's right there. It's there all the time. So, and we look to enhance this. Like Katie mentioned earlier, we're trying to get a tax guide update for the county clerks that's more automated and a little bit easier for you guys to use and for you guys to search too. And Katie's got mission of sorts that she wants to do and help you guys out on that. But that is not something you just snap your fingers and it's automatically done. So it's going to take a little time. But we're looking forward to that and getting some more tools out there for you guys. And we just want to also say before we wrap up today how much we appreciate what you guys do. It's real easy. Well, I won't say it's real easy. That's not true, but it's easier for Katie and I to sit in a government office or at home as we are right now and try to help you guys or whatever. But what you're doing on a daily basis is you're right in front of these taxpayers that are right across the counter from you, just like they always are, and you're trying to solve their problems. So there's nothing quite like that face-to-face customer service that you guys do. And I know that our citizens appreciate that, and we at Revenue appreciate what you do too. It's a big deal. There's 95 counties in this state. Isn't that crazy? That's nuts. So it's a lot of counties and a lot of people that you guys reach out and touch all the time. You're going to be issuing new blue license plates to them. I'm sure that'll go perfectly. There'll be no problems along those lines. But
Good luck to you all over the coming
yes,
months.
Katie and I will keep you in our prayers as you begin that wonderful process. But we at Revenue, all of our bosses and the commissioner, we just appreciate what y'all do. And I'm not just saying that to say it, I mean it too. We talk about how crazy some things get at different times, but you guys do a wonderful job, and it just can't go without saying. It really can't.
All right. Well, I think we'll go ahead and wrap things up here. Penny, Mitzi, the emails say when you email answers like this, can you copy all clerks? We'd like to be in on the same page. One of the things that we are looking to do when we create this new online guide that we're going to be creating is updating it, just like with your title and registration vehicle services one. When there are scenarios that come out or little examples or something needs to be clarified, comes to our attention from any of the clerks, we will be putting that in there, and we'll be updating all clerks with updates to that guide, so you'll know when we update it. We've got a question from Donna in here with just a minute to go before we all got to get back to real world here. To be clear, if a corporation wants to give a car, they can do so with a gift form. Uh, that is correct. It's very rare that a corporation is just going to give a car away, but if they do, if they sign that affidavit, I mean, it might be something that audit looks at
Yeah,
pretty
that
closely, but
there's no question about that. We had a big discussion about this maybe 6 weeks ago with another county. Um, and when I reached out to audit for what their opinion was, their their basic viewpoint on that is if you've got a company that's giving a vehicle away, there's almost always something they're getting for that. Like if I give this to my buddy who owns a company over here, it's unheard of to just give a motor vehicle away. You
usually
know,
there's some kind of consideration.
right. You might get something from that other guy. You might get some services from them. You might get, in theory, you might get stock in their company. You could get something that's not really tangible that you can measure. You can get advertising because you did this, because you did this, you got advertising out there about your company's ability to be a community member and all that too.
Really, the
That's
clerk doesn't have to be the detective on that case,
no,
right?
not
Just
a
take that affidavit at face value. They're signing it under penalty of perjury, and then
right, right. You can encourage them that, this is what the situation is, and this is the way that they need to think about this, but it's going to be their determination as to do it. Now, you can decide how you want to administer that as the county clerk. If you want to send it in and flag it to audit and say, look, I flagged this because I'm not really feeling real comfortable about this. See if you want to make an assessment on it. Send it to discovery, like we talked about earlier. they'll take a look at it. And then if they
Right.
think it's an assessment or at least a phone call or an email or something like that, they'll work
Right.
it, as far as that goes. It's one of those things. So it's a judgment call almost every single time. So you just want to be real careful about making a good decision and check with us. We'll help you through it. We'll be glad to help you in any way we can.
Well, I think we've gone just a couple minutes over here, over our time. I think some people have already hopped off. Thank you all so much for being here with us today. We hope to be able to do some more of these in the future as needed. Let us know if you need additional assistance. Reach out to us. When you leave the event, a little survey is gonna pop up. It's just got one question on there. If you could take just a second and answer the survey, help us know how we may be able to better serve you and if this was a helpful training for you. And we hope to see you all soon.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. Have a good day.
Thank you
Okay.
all so much.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.